Hello there, it's Jan here from JB Crafts. Thank you for joining me on the channel today. And I'm back with another concept card tutorial today. And as some of you know that's been following me and watching me, we've just come back from our summer holiday vacation, and we spend an awful lot of time at the beach. I've been away with all my little grandbabies and my daughters, and we spend a lot of time at the beach. So I thought, you know what, I'm going to dig out my beach themed stamps and dies and use those as a theme for this particular card. Now the concept is called a bridge card because it has this piece across here that holds the shape of the card, and you can see how we've got some simple score and fold lines, and then the bit across the middle holds it all together. So this one's actually, the inside part is a 6.5 inch square, and then we've got the extra pieces on the sides, but it will fold flat and it folds down. It would probably need a custom envelope for this one unless you've got a really large one. It folds down to 9.5 by 6.5, but you can see that the whole thing does actually fold pretty much into a flat panel unless you've used any dimension on any of your embellishments and things like that. So yeah, it should fold either way. You can fold it to this side or to this side and you'll get it down flat, but we've got that lovely sort of bridged design here to add extra embellishments on. So I've done a lot of prep for this one because it did take me a little while. I want to concentrate on the actual concept of the card, which is really, really simple. And once you understand how this works, you can make these in any size. So your panel could be 5 by 7 in the center. It could be larger. It could be a long sort of diorama size piece. So yeah, you can adapt it to any particular style. So let me show you how I've made it, and then, as I say, I'll talk you through. I've got a couple of little tips and tricks for the die cutting with these stamped elements, and I've got all mine prepared and coloured in ready. So let's do the concept for the card, and then I'll show you how I've arrived at the pieces that we're going to decorate with. I've done some inking in the background for the sky and the ocean, and then this is actually a piece of cardstock that I've used some of my spray on. So I'll show you the products as we go along through the design. So let's pop that one over there. And to get you started with the basic card, you're going to need a piece of 11.5 by 6.5. So this should come out of a piece of A4 card. I'm going to grab my scoreboard. We need to pop a couple of score lines in each side. Get my score tool and my burnishing tool, and we want to go on the long side. We want to score at 1.5 and 2.5. So nice simple score lines. So we're going to go at 1.5, and then I'm actually going to flip mine over to do the 2.5, and I'll explain why I've done that in a second. And then I'm going to go all the way around 180 degrees, and then I'm going to do the 1.5 on the front and the 2.5 on the back. Okay, so 4 simple score lines. That's all we need to do today. Pop that one back in its little place. So let's get rid of this one then. We don't need that anymore. And we're going to do some simple folding. So I like to score on the side that I'm going to fold on. So this one was done on the top, and this is going to become a mountain fold. So we're going to fold it back on itself. And where I've scored, it's almost sort of started breaking down the fibres in the card. So I find, and some people do this differently, but I just find that works for me in that I get very, very little cracking on that score line. So a nice, neat score line. Hence why I turned it over to do the second score line, because we're going to turn it over and we're going to fold this one from the other side to create what's known as a valley fold. So the first one was mountain, the second one was valley. So we're going to get that angled shape on it. So the top one's a mountain, the inside one's a valley, and then it should all fold nice and flat. So we're going to do the same on this side. The outside score line folds back on itself to make the mountain, and then flip it over, and I prefer to do it this way. You know, as I say, everybody's different. I know some people score on the opposite side, and that's absolutely fine. There's no right or wrong with this. It's just my own preference. And then that gives you that shaping that we're going to need to make the card. Okay. And then we're going to need the piece to go across the front. Now we've got in effect here 1.5 inches and then 1 inch on the return. So we're going to lose this inch part here and the inch on this side. So we need to lose 2 inches off here. So this one is going to measure 9. Technically the width of it would be 9.5 because you've got that 2 inches missing. If you remember, we started with 11.5 on the width. So the width of this, when it's folded correctly, should be 9.5. Now I've actually taken mine down to 9.25 because I wanted mine to finish level with the panels that I've put on the card. If you want to take it right to the edge so that your piece goes right across to the outside edge of the card, it would need to be the 9.5 inches. So just a little note there for that one. Now I just need to trim mine. I was just waiting for the glue to dry. I've got a little tiny bit overhanging on that edge that wants trimming away. I think that one's okay, yeah. And this one then will fit across here, and I'm going to leave like a tiny little gap, which would be the equivalent of my border around the panels that I'm going to put on here. So we'll put that on in a second. So let's just go back to our main card part now. We'll come back to this one when we put the card together. And then I'm going to show you what I've done for the panels. We're going to make panels that go on the front here. I've done ones on the inside, in the back, in the inside, and on this outside again. So you can see my pattern is continuous all the way through here on the outside return, the inside, the back, the inside, and the outside. So what I did was take a piece of cardstock, and let me just think about this now. My cardstock measured, what did it measure? I should have written that down. I've come in 1/4 inch for each of the measurements. So we've got 1 1/4 plus 3/4 is 2. This one measures 3/4. So that's 2 inches and 2 inches and 6 1/4. So it measures 10 1/4. I took a piece of white cardstock that measured 10 1/4 inches by 3 1/8. And I used smooth white cardstock for this. And then I created my panel and then brought in my inks for this one. So I've used a combination. I've marked sort of about halfway, a slightly deeper bit I think for the sky, and then less for the ocean part. And then what I did was use my panel. This one's not the right size obviously, but I've used my panel to ink the top, and I've used tumble glass for the sky, and use my blending brushes, and deliberately made it a little bit patchy. You can see it's not a solid background. I've got that little bit of patchiness because I wanted to add some of the clouds in there as well. And then I've swapped brushes and masked off the halfway point here all the way across my piece. I masked it off with some washi tape, and then I've brought in some salvage patina to do the bottom half. So we've got a darker shade here than the sky. And then just to make the horizon a little bit darker, I came with a little bit of peacock feathers, which blends beautifully with the salvage patina, and just brought that down from the top so that we've got a bit of depth here. If you ever sat watching the ocean, it seems to look darker the further away it gets from you. So that depth makes that sort of illusion that it's darker. So I've got my horizon line in the back there, and that was done simply, as I say, straight across that one piece. So let me pop those back to one side. And then for the bottom, I actually used a piece of cardstock from my stash, and I thought this was a perfect colour. It's actually got a little bit of, it's very dark for craft card on the back, but I thought this was the perfect colour for the beach. In an ideal world, the beach that we use is very, very pebbly. Lots of, we do a lot of rock hounding and sea glass hunting, that kind of thing. But yeah, I thought we'd use this one. And again, I cut the same panel. So I'd got that same width, let's say was 10.5 by the 3 1/8. And then I've cut a strip for this one. I'll tell you the measurement for the bridge part in a second. And then all I did to that one, just to create a bit of interest, was use my Distress Spritz Fossilized amber is a beautiful sort of gold when you get it on. I don't know whether the camera will pick it up, but you can see in the background and on here, it's just got that lovely misting of sparkle on there, because the sand does sparkle when the sun gets on it. You can just see there where I've added that. So all I did was spritz that whole piece and leave it to dry. Okay, now on the original one, I added some splatters as well with my Distress Dritzing Enchanted Mariner. I don't have a lighter blue than that, and I think it was a little bit dark. I wasn't overly pleased with how this came out with the dark blue splotches. I just thought, oh, there's clearly a lot of seaweed floating around in the ocean there. And I haven't done that on the new one. I've used some splatters of the Distress ink in the peacock feathers just to add a little bit of dimension to the water. And I'll show you that panel. I've done that panel ready because I needed to get it to dry. And then what I did is I've got the two pieces, the long strip of the blue, the long strip of the yellow, and then I've stuck them together on the back with some double-sided tape. I've got a decent width one. I think this one's about an inch, is it? 3/4? Yeah, 3/4 of an inch. So I've just used that and stuck the two panels together on the reverse in the middle there, so that I'd got a big piece of 10.5 by 6.25. All right, and then we're going to chop it into the panels. All right, so again, to talk you through this one, it's just a case of measuring your panels. So the return is 1.5 inches, so I've cut the first piece down to 1.25. All right, let me just bring these in. All right, so we've got 1.25 inches. You can see where I've stuck it together in the middle here with the tape, and that's my first one. Then I've cut off the same size a 3/4 inch piece, because I want this to continue all the way through. And then I've done the same at the other side. I came in from this side at 1.5, and then again at 3/4 of an inch. So I've got my panels for the outside and my panels for the inside there that we're going to stick down onto the base card. And then the background I've done a lot more work to, because there were stages of this that needed to dry. So you can see I've got those two pieces with the join in the middle. Put some tape on the back. I'm hoping we're okay with this because my glue's not quite dry. But I think we should be able to work with it. And then I'll talk you through what we've done here. So these are the panels that we're going to use. You can see that continuous pattern all the way across. And then I've added a little bit of interest. When I got this one flat, I thought it doesn't look realistic, because there was a very, very straight line between the beach and the ocean. And whereas the horizon is often a straight line, I've just added a bit of glue. And then I've thrown some glitter on the top of it. I've got some of the glitter jewels from Cosmic Shimmer, which is Creative Expressions. And all I did was put the glue on in little wavy bits where it's lapping up onto the shore. A few in the back, put the glitter on. And then once the glue's dried, this is actually transparent now. It's just catching the light in the back there. This one's not quite dry. I'm hoping I can work with it. There's a little bit of the glue under here yet that hasn't quite cured, and there's still a bit of white showing. So I'm hoping we're okay with that. So I'm going to just pop those to one side and then talk you through the stamping. Now, for the beach theme, I knew I'd got some beach themed sets, and I've pulled out a couple of sets out of my stash. And again, you know that I'm always encouraging you to use your stash. Have a look what you've got in there and use your stash. So I pulled a couple of these out of my sets, and I've got one from a collection. They're both Crafter's Companion, and one of them was from a collection called Best of British, which came out years ago. I absolutely loved the collection when it came out, and there were 4 different themes, one of them being a beach day. And you get a set of acrylic stamps and the matching dies to cut them out. So I've used elements from that one. And then this one was from a collection called Home Away from Home. Again, a little bit newer than this one. I think this is the oldest one, and this was called Life's a Beach. And again, there are lots of beachy type images with the coordinating dies, so I went to town with these, and I'm going to give you a little tip for how to do these if you haven't seen it before. So these are the 2 that I've used. Now in this one, you've got the pier with the rocks on the edge here. I thought, right, I want to I want to include that in mine at the back here. It reminds me quite a bit. Where we go to the coast, there isn't actually a pier, but obviously, if you're along the east coast, there's a lot of the seaside towns on the east coast in the UK have the long piers out with the. I love the the buildings at the end of the piers. So what I did was take the stamp, which is this one here. Okay, and I've stamped it onto a piece of plain cardstock, and for my stamping, all my stamping, I've used Nina cardstock. All right, it's a little bit thinner, and it takes alcohol markers beautifully, which is what I wanted to use for my colouring. So I've stamped it onto some cardstock and then just coloured in the pier building and the rocks and cut those out with my scissors. Just fussy cut them right up to the excuse me, right up to the line art. I've not left any white edge around it because I wanted this to look as realistic as possible in the background. So yeah, right up to the line art, cut out round the pier, round the building, and back up under here. So this one, the stamp has actually got a little bit of beach on it as well, a bit of ocean on it, but I didn't want that because I'd created my own. And then I've put this panel into my stamping platform, masked it here, and I've stamped it in the background straight onto the panel because I wanted all the pier work and the little yeah, whatever it's called, big wheel, yeah, it just to be sort of as if it was sort of skeleton in the background. Looking from that distance, you wouldn't be able to see much detail, so I've stamped it straight onto the card underneath, and then the piece that I've cut out I've just added over the top with a little bit of colour. And then my other set of dies have got the clouds in. So I've just cut some clouds out of white cardstock and dotted those around as if, the clouds are just starting to pop in. And then the little seagull is actually from a different stamp set. I just looked through the others to see what I could find. And I just felt that it needed a little bit of the gap filling in. So I've just stamped a couple of those in the background. And that's what I've done to prepare those background panels. So what we can do is actually hopefully get those onto the card now. I'm hoping, as I say, I'm going to do that central one first. And hoping I can get this in without damaging where the glue's still drying. And that's one of the reasons I've put some tape on the back. I tried to speed up the drying of the glue with my heat tool. And of course, as most of you know, heat applied to card, it just warps the card. So I ended up with a bit of a wibbly wobbly card, and I thought, right, it's not going to be easy to press it flat while the glue's still slightly damp. So I've put some tape on the back to help it lay flat. I'm also going to add some wet glue so that I can get that wriggle time to get it in place, because it's going to be a little bit of a tricky one, this one. And I needed to get my video done so that I can put this up for you in time. I've got my little grandchildren tomorrow, so I knew I wasn't going to have time tomorrow to get any filming done. So let's just pop that one off there. And then I'm going to grab my all-purpose glue, and I'm just going to put a little bit over it so that I've got a bit of wriggle room, so that the double-sided tape just doesn't grab and I end up with it in the wrong place. As I say, I'm not going to be able to apply a lot of pressure to the front of it. So just over where I've got the tape, I'm just going to go round just a little bit. I haven't taken the backing off the tape in the middle. I'm not too worried about that. And then get it the right way up, Jan. And this one's going to go in that central panel. All right, so we just need to leave about 1/8 of an inch border all the way round. And once you're happy with your positioning, we can commit to sticking that down. I'm going to avoid the parts with the glue on across here. These look as if they're okay in the ocean. It's just these three at the front where the waves. So yeah, I'm just going to press round there carefully where I know the tape's underneath, and it should lie nice and flat now. There we go. Okay, then just give my hands a little wipe. I have found that the mica off some of the spray does transfer a little bit, and I don't want to get that all over the card. So I'm just going to wipe that off, and I'm okay with that. I think that looks all right. I'm just going to press on it there. Use the cloth, and then it's not going to go on my fingers. I think we've got a yeah, and it helps it lay flat with the tape under it as well. And then for these side panels, I'm just going to use my acrylic glue. So I put the left and right on so that I knew which ones went in which position with regards to that continuation of pattern. So this one's going to go on this side here, and again there should be a nice 1/8 of an inch border all the way around, and that's just how I like to I haven't put them on a matte layer. I didn't want to introduce any more layers into here. I've just gone straight onto the card background, and again we've got that little skinny one that's going to go on the inside. Now you don't have to do the inside one if you don't want to. You could skip this one, but like I said, I just wanted that pattern to look as if it continued all the way across the card. So that's that side, and then we're going to do the same. And these ones I'd put the R for the right hand side just so that I didn't get them. I don't think there's a lot of difference, to be honest. I don't think it would have been obvious if they were the wrong way around, but you know what I'm like with the OCD. Everything has to go in the right place. So that one on there, and then the little skinny one. So these are all 6 1/4 inches tall, 1/4 of an inch less than the card height, and then 1/4 of an inch down from the width. So this was 1 1/2, the panel's 1 1/4. This was a 1 inch fold, so this is 3/4. This was 6 1/2, so this one's 6 1/4, and then so on across the other side. So that's that bit. Okay, so we'll leave that to dry for a second, and while that's drying I'll show you the stamping technique that I was talking about. So I'm just going to pop that down to one side to dry, and then what we're going to do is we're going to create, I've got all the embellishments created, but I'm going to show you the trick for, because sometimes I've spent an age with these, sometimes stamping them out, colouring them in, and then you come to use the die and you end up skewy with the die, and it makes a mess of your colouring. So top tip number 1 would be to do your die cutting first. Do the stamping and die cutting first, because the colouring does take a while, and the last thing you want to do is spoil it. I've got so frustrated in the past when I've cut things out and the die's been wonky, haven't lined it, not the die, I haven't lined up the die properly. So yeah, do the die cutting first and then do the stamping onto the die cut, and that's the trick. So tip number 1, die cut first, and then I'm going to show you how to get them lined up nice and straightforward. So I'm going to bring in my stamping platform, and we're going to create the little sandcastle that's on here. I've got all these prepped ready. So I want the sandcastle itself, and then there is a matching die in this set for the sandcastle. So I've got the stamp and the die. So the first thing that we want to do is actually stamp this out. So I've put this in my MISTI and picked it up with the door, and I've just stamped it onto a piece of scratch paper. Okay, and then I'm going to keep that in there. So that was the stamp side of it done. Put that one back up there for a minute. Then I've used the die, and I've die cut out my image, and this is in the Nina cardstock again because I'm going to add some colour to it. So we've used the die, and then what I did for all my elements was make what's known as a jig. And I've cut all the elements out of a piece of that same Nina cardstock. So this was my original die cutting. When I first did this, I laid all the pieces out, stuck the dies down, cut them all out, and then save the piece that you've cut out. So all the embellishments that I wanted to use, the little beach huts, the windbreak, the ice creams, I've got a bucket and spade, I've got some sandcastles, I've got the deck chair and the umbrella. Die cut them all out ready. And then what we're going to do is we're going to use the jig first. Yeah, I'm going to put this on here now. So where the stamp is, I'm going to find my pattern here. What I'm going to do is line it up around the stamped image. So you want to have a look for a nice even border all the way around that stamped image. So imagine you've got that little white edge around all the detail, and once you're happy with that, get that in place. Now this one's a really strong magnet in here, so keep that there in place. You know that that's going to stamp in exactly the right place now. Okay, right, I need to put my stamp back on, Jan. So let me just line that one up in there. Right, I thought I was getting ahead doing it that way, but let me do it again. You need the stamp on first. So let me just do this first. I thought, well, if I get it stamped out ready, we'll be good to go. That's all right about there, yeah. So we need the stamp on the platform. So let's just do that one again. As I say, I was trying to get ahead of the game so that the videos are not too long in the end. But you do need the stamp in place before you do the rest of it. Okay, and then we're going to bring the door closed. I've got my paper is down in the corner so that I know where that's going to be. I'm going to put the magnet on it so it doesn't move, and then stamp out your image, which is essentially what I'd already done, but I need the stamp in place. I took the stamp off the platform. So I know that that's going to stamp there. Then we're going to do the lining up. So again, we're going to pop this over the top. Have a look through your little image that you've die cut, so that you can see that white edging all the way around. And once you're happy with that, get that magnet on there to hold it in place. So we know now that this is going to stamp in the gap. And then the little piece that you've die cut sits in here, like so. And then if I ink up my image again with some ink, once I close the window now, I know that this is going to line up perfectly with the die cut piece that's underneath. And then we can take all this away, and we've got that beautiful little die cut that's perfectly positioned there with the white edge all the way around it. Now I'm not able to do this properly if I've stamped the image first and then try and position the die around it. You know, when you've done it and then you try and line this up, because the cut line's inside the metal, there's always that little bit of error, and especially with tiny little bits like this, I find that this is the easiest way to do it. So create yourself that jig, that piece where the die cuts have been cut out, and follow this method, and you should get a perfect image every time. It saves a lot of waste cardstock and time. It works every time, and I've done that with all my pieces. So let's have a look what we've actually got in here then. I've put some of them together already. So let's have a look. Out of this one, I stamped out the little windbreak here exactly in the same way, and I've coloured that one in. I've used my TriBlend markers to colour all these in. So I actually stamped the images with an alcohol friendly ink. So I did them all in a brown rather than black so that it wasn't too harsh, and I've used an alcohol proof ink so that I could use the markers. I've also done the parasol and the little deck chair, and then there's a little tiny birdie here. I've sat him on top of the parasol. And then I didn't want the big beach house. The other set has got the little small beach houses in, so I've gone with that one. And I've done the postcard at the back there, along with the beach houses, and then the little ice creams and lollies are back off this set again. And I've just got this cluster already done. The little piece of bunting's off this set. I've got that one ready to go on the project. That was the little sandcastle that we cut out that I've coloured in. Again, just using some of the markers. So we've got our sandcastle. We don't need that one now. And then there's also a little sandcastle in the other set here, which is really cute. So I've done that one as well. There is another deck chair in this one, you know, so if you've got either of these sets, you've probably got enough embellishments. There's the bucket and spade in this one. The ice creams are a little bit bigger in this one, which is why I went for the smaller ones. But yeah, you could probably, if you've just got one of the sets, you could probably do this with just one of them. I've got the little bucket. Let me just move that one over again a bit so that you can see what I'm doing. I've got the bucket and the spade. And these have all been die cut on the same paper and inked and then coloured with the TriBlend markers. So you can see there we've got the images, and then I had the lolly and the ice cream that's got the chocolate flake in for this part here. I've got the bunting on the postcard, and then we've got those lovely little beach huts that I've coloured in, and I've just stuck those together in a cluster ready to go on the card. And then my sentiment, life's a beach, I've just stamped on that, just created it into like a little flag shape, which again was sort of in keeping with that theme. And we've got all those things good to go now. So let's pop all these down and we'll get these in place. Pop those to one side and then bring our card back in, and we need to stick that piece on the front. So let me just put all my little embellishments up here out of the way. And what we're going to do is we're going to stick this piece across the front now. So I've got a piece that is 9 1/4 by 1 1/2. And then I've done the same as what I did on the beach here on the sand, and I've cut a strip that is 1 1/4 inches, so that I've got the gap again, by the same length, because I wanted it to go edge to edge. And I'm going to line mine up with the edge of the panel like that. Like I said, if you want it to go right to the edge of the card, you just need to add that extra 1/4 of an inch, and this would be 9 1/2 in length. But I wanted mine to stop here and stop here. So I'm just going to work out how far up I put this one, and we'll do it the same. It was 2 1/2 from the bottom. So I'm just going to grab a pencil and I'm going to mark on this edge here 2 1/2 inches up from the bottom, and then I'm going to do the same on this side. Excuse me, on there, just so that I've got a guideline of where to pop this. And then I'm going to use that acrylic glue again, because we're going onto the surface that's got the spritz on, and we're going to go with the glue on here on this end, and you're going to come in 1 1/2 inches. I've just drawn a pencil line on mine so that I know roughly where to glue. So 1 1/2 inches, you just need glue in that 2 corners. And then I am going to just take off any excess from the edge there, because I don't want it to leak out onto that inked surface. And then I'm going to line this up with the outside edge and that pencil mark that we put on here, and just get that one as straight as I can, like so. And then we're going to bring this one in, and we're going to stick it at the same point. So I've got my pencil mark, and then line it up with the edge of the panel. In fact, if I close it over like this, it should lay exactly in the right place there. So you should be able to get it flat either one way or this way, and the whole thing lay flat, and they should line up here perfectly with the edges of those panels. So just apply a little bit of pressure, and then when you pop it into shape, you've got that lovely shape going on there. So I'm just going to give that a second to dry. Just give my nose a little blow, and then we'll start with the embellishments, which is just a case of sticking them on. I've not got a lot of them on foam tape. I have popped the odd 1 or 2 bits on foam tape, but not a lot. So if you want to fast forward through this bit, I will not be offended. I'm just going to lay these out. The first thing I did when I did the original one was just lay everything out dry before I started sticking anything down, so that I could decide roughly where I wanted things to go. And I've got some of them in the background, and then I've got some of them along here. So I've got the windbreak on the beach in the background. This one is going to go here in this corner like this. So I want to put some glue. I'm going to put my fingers here where I don't need the glue, and then I've got some little foam pads. Let me just get rid of those on the back here ready. So the beach huts are on foam pads, and I think the ice creams are on foam pads. Let me just take that one off as well. And then I'm going to put, let me just try, yeah, that corner doesn't want glue. So I want some glue down this side and across the bottom here. And then we're just going to pop that at a slight little angle. I want the beach hut straight and then the postcards at a slight angle there, to just pop that one onto that bridge like so. And then it's just a case of adding all the other pieces, you know, as I say, lay it out dry to start with, and decide where you want them all to go to build up your scene. And if you don't have any of the beach stuff, you know, this theme could be absolutely anything. You know, if you like to go camping, you may have stamp sets that have got camping designs on them. If you like to go sort of on more of a sightseeing holiday, you know, you might have something that fits that theme. It doesn't have to be a scene. You know, you could put a beautiful, I might revisit this again, you know, at a later date. It could just be a beautiful floral display down one side with some nice pattern papers in the background. You could have a frame on here with a photo in and then some papers in the background. So, you know, there's lots of different ways to do this. I just thought, seeing as we were sort of getting towards the end of the summer and that we've just got back from our summer holiday, this would be a lovely theme to do. So again, just adding glue to those pieces where you want it. And then I'm going to pop the sandcastle here as if we've been building sandcastles. My little ones, my bad boys, absolutely love being down on the beach. And the baby, I mean, the baby is nearly 6 months old, believe it or not. He is just starting to join in now. He can sit up properly, and he's been down on the beach with them. He's had his little toes in the sand. They're all going to be beach babies. So yeah, we spend tons and tons of time down there. Right, I've got the other sandcastle down here. As I say, we go rock hounding. We like sort of collecting the rocks, collecting the sea glass. So much fun had, and chasing the tide. They like to go down to the water's edge and then run back when the tide comes in. We've had many and many an hour of fun down there. We've even been down there in the rain. You know, if it's just been a light rain, it doesn't put us off. We just put a few layers on and off we go. You know, the British weather is very unpredictable. So I'm just following the layout that I did on the original card and adding some of these to my scene. As I said, this it could be any theme. You know, you could do like a retirement card for a gentleman that's retiring, maybe that's a gardener, and you could do a gardening theme if you've got stamp sets that have the gardening items on. You know, there's lots of ideas for it. It could be a wedding card, you know, and you could actually put sort of wedding items on it. You could, you know, if you've got a stamp set of a bride and groom, it would look lovely. So yeah, lots and lots of different themes. And then last I've got that one that's got a little foam pad on, and that one's just going to go up here like so. It does look as if it's floating around a little bit, but we can get away with it. We can use artistic license. And then I've got my stamp sentiment, which again I've just put some little foam pads on the back just to raise that bit, because it's on the inside. It's not going to create too much trouble. The trouble's the foam pads. Here we go. Look, I thought I was doing well. Come along. Oh, do you know? I don't know what it is about them. Some of them come off fine, and the others decide they're going to be a nuisance. So this one, I'm just going to pop across that division here between the ocean and the sky, and just put that in the background. The Life's a Beach. So like I said, the actual card itself, very simple scoring, and once you've realised how this piece fits on, you don't have to worry about whether you've got the angles right on top, because this bridge section will hold it all in place perfectly. And then remember, as you stick it, fold it flat to stick it so that you've got everything laying flat. Whichever way you go, it should all lay flat. And then you end up with a 9.5 by 6.5 for this particular size. Now that's not a regular size envelope, but I have got a tutorial on the channel for a previous card that I made where I was asked about how you would make a box to put it in. I will possibly look at doing how to do your own envelopes any size. There's an easy way to work those out if you wanted to do an envelope for it rather than a gift box. So I think we did pretty well avoiding the glue at the back. That's still a tiny little bit damp. If I bring you the original one back in, all I've done, as always, you know, those of you that know me, we've got a few little gold beads going along here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I've actually got an even number on there today, which is unusual. I might have to add another one. I normally work in odd numbers. It was just the way that they landed, again, just to sort of enhance it, and I'd put some on the sentiment up there. And then when I was actually working in the industry and I used to do the demo, and a lot of people used to say to me, right, it's lovely, Jan, it's a lovely card, but where would you put your message? So let's just put that one over to dry. And as always, as I've done in the past, I've actually got my space on the back of it. So again, I've used some scraps that were left over. This is that cardstock that I showed you. The piece that I'd cut into previously, I'd got a scrap left. So I've just put that on there to link it. And then I've done a piece on the back, this bit on the front. This is from the stamp set again. We've got that relax and enjoy yourself there just in that top corner. And then this was from the set that the little birdies were in, just to add a bit of detail here that was still sort of beach, nautical sort of themed. And then I've gone round the edge with the two colours. I've got the lighter colour, the tumbled glass in the background, and then I've got the salvage patina on this one here. And again, you know, you could go straight onto the back of the card. You could write a message on the back of the card. You don't have to do the decorating. I just think it balances it. It sort of balances it weight-wise. If you've got a lot of detail on the front of your card, you don't want it tipping forwards. So I always put something on the back just to give it some stability. And then it will stand up perfectly, as is. Nice little sort of... it's almost like a gift as well, this, you know, especially if it's got a scene on that's relevant to somebody. Like I say, if it was a gardener, or maybe somebody that's into cars or golfing, if it's for a gentleman, ladies, you know, and so many different ones. It might be a sewing theme for somebody that's a soft crafter, things like that. So yes, so many different themes that you could do. And again, you know, if you're not into making the scenes in the background, you could get papers that have got beach scenes on, or you could just use pattern papers in the background. So I hope you've enjoyed that one today. As I say, the concept style, very simple to make. The decoration can be whatever you want it to be. And I think I do prefer the sea, the ocean, without those big blobs in it. I wasn't happy with the colour on that one. I knew when I picked it up that it was dark, and I thought, well, it's the only blue turquoisey colour one that I've got. But I do prefer it. I've just used some of the peacock feathers ink, splattered it with water first, and then done the ink on it. And I think that one's a bit more realistic there. So yeah, whichever one, you know, whichever way, you've got options there. If you've got more, if I'd got the spritz in, for example, the salvage patina, that would have worked well on there. But yeah, here we go. This one's got a lot of seaweed collected today on this beach. So if you've enjoyed it, consider giving it a thumbs up for me. It's been great to have your company, and I will be back shortly with a new tutorial. I upload on Tuesdays and Saturdays, so the next one will be a little bit more technique orientated, and I'll be back then. So whatever you've got planned for today, enjoy yourselves, and I'll see you very soon. Bye bye now.